Okay, this video tutorial looks at the mathematical strand of real number, and more specifically we're going to focus on how to convert between decimals and fractions. So how do we convert between decimals and fractions, or essentially decimals to fractions? Well, the first thing you need to do is to locate the last digit in your decimal. All right. Make sure you understand what column that digit is from. And then you just write your decimal as a whole number over the top of the value of that column. As an example, if we're looking at converting 0.345 into a fraction, our last digit is the 5. This actually happens to be in our thousandths column. So we would write our decimal as a whole number. So we've got 3, 4, 5 all over our 1,000. Right? And then we would cancel that down. In this particular case, we're going to cancel down by 5. So that's going to be over 200. And that's going to be 69 over 200. Now, how do you convert the other way? So how do you convert fractions to decimals? Well, essentially, you've just got to divide the numerator by the denominator. And you can use short division or long division for this. So one way I like to think about it is you stick your bum out, which means that the bottom number, which is a 5 in this case, or the denominator, is outside the shed. All right, so stick your bum out. And the numerator is inside the shed. Now I've added some zeros towards the end. We may not need them, but I'll just add them in there just to help out if we need. And then we just simply do our short or long division. 5s into 4 we can't do. I'm going to do some short division. 5s into 40 is 8. And then with no remainder. So therefore, 4/5 is the same as 0.8. Another thing you can do as well is if your denominator is a factor of 100, then you can essentially just turn it into 100. So in this particular case, 4/5 can be turned into something over 100 because we essentially times by 20. And if we're going to times by 20 on both sides, we end up with 80 over 100. 80 over 100 as a decimal is equal to 0.80 or just 0.8. So you can see that we end up with the same answer. But sometimes with our fractions, our denominator will not be a factor of 100, which will make it a little bit harder. So here's some example questions where we need to write 0.45 in its simplest fraction form, and then we need to work out what 7/9 is as a decimal. If we're looking at our first question, we identify that our last digit in this decimal is a 5. It's actually in the hundreds column. Okay, so this is going to be 45 over 100, which then cancels down to 9 over 20. And that's in its simplest fraction form. With our next question, where we've got 7/9 as a decimal, again, stick your bum out. The bottom number is the 9, that goes outside the little shed. 7 is on the inside. And we do our short or long division. 9s into 7 you can't do. 9s into 70. 9 sevens are 63, so that gives us a remainder of 7. 9s into 70 gives us a remainder of 7. And as you can see, we're getting a bit of a pattern here. So 7/9 is actually 0.7 recurring. Okay, I'd now like you to have a go at these practice questions. Pause the video. When you think you've got them correct, resume the video and we'll go through the answers. Okay, so let's see how you went. Now, in our first question, the decimal number, the last digit of our decimal is a 7. That's in the tens column, so this becomes simply 7 over 10. With our last question, we have 5/8. Again, we stick our bottom out. 8 goes out, 5's in the middle, or inside the little house. I've put some zeros in, I may not need them, but put them in anyway. 8s into 5 you can't do. 8s into 50, 8 sixes are 48, so that leaves with 2 remainder. 8s into 20 are 2, with 4 remainder. 8s into 40 are 5. So therefore 5/8 is equal to 0.625.